Welcome to the Classic Soap Operas podcast, your shortcut to being, well, pretty well informed about the fascinating world of daytime drama.
It's great to be here.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into a show that, despite its very real struggles, became this really unlikely launching pad for some huge Hollywood stars. We're talking about the ABC soap opera Loving.
Oh, that's right. A show many people might not remember by name.
Exactly. You might genuinely think you've never heard of it, but I promise you, you have seen its alumni. They're everywhere, primetime movies.
Oh, absolutely. The list is quite staggering when you look at it.
So we're going to unpack its surprising history, which is often pretty chaotic. We'll get into its truly wild storylines, and yeah, we mean wild.
Some really stand out.
And then we'll reveal these incredibly famous faces who got their start in the fictional and, let's be honest, often pretty ill-fated town of Corinth, Pennsylvania. Get ready for some real aha moments, because the story of Loving, it's way more interesting than its reputation might suggest.
It really is. It's a show that kind of embodies a paradox in daytime history. You know, often dismissed because, well, its ratings were challenging for a lot of its run.
Yeah, that's the main thing people remember, if they remember it at all.
Right, but its influence, especially as this, training ground for an amazing array of acting talent.
Yeah.
It's just undeniable. It's a classic case of, hidden impact.
That's a great way to put it, hidden impact. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start at the beginning, the genesis of Loving. This wasn't just some thrown-together show, was it? It came with some serious soap opera royalty behind it.
Oh, far from it. Loving was co-created by two absolute titans of the soap world, Agnes Nixon and Douglas Marland.
Wow, okay. Agnes Nixon, of course, legendary.
Absolutely legendary. I mean, she was the mastermind behind huge hits, critically acclaimed shows like One Life to Live, All My Children. Her name alone meant quality. It meant solid storytelling.
Yeah, it carried a lot of weight.
And Marland, he was not just a prolific writer. He'd also been an actor. So he had this kind of unique perspective on character, on dialogue. Together, they brought a really formidable vision to the table.
So they were aiming for something specific then, like a return to classic soap opera, even though things were changing in the 80s.
That's exactly it. The 80s were, well, a wild time for soaps. A lot of them were getting very youth-focused, action-packed. I think of General Hospital under Gloria Monty, right?
Oh, yeah, total action adventure. Luke and Laura dominating everything.
Precisely. But Nixon and Marland, they had this different vision, almost countercultural for the time. Their explicit goal was to create a traditional classic soap opera for the 1980s.
Okay, so pushing back against the trend.
Consciously pushing back. They wanted romance, genuine, enduring romance, to be the absolute heart of the show, an ode to love without end. In fact, that was its original working title.
Love without end, seriously.
Literally love without end. It really tells you about that initial, maybe slightly idealistic romantic vision they had, a vision that, as we'll see, got tested a lot.
Love without end. That's very soap opera. And they didn't just sneak onto the air. The launch was pretty grand, wasn't it? Especially for a daytime show.
It really was. Loving premiered June 26, 1983. And not with a standard half-hour episode. No, they kicked it off with a full 2-hour primetime movie.
Wow, primetime. That's a big deal for a soap.
Huge deal. It showed ABC was really investing in it, believed in its potential. It wasn't just launching a show, it felt like launching an event. Then the next day, it started its regular half-hour weekday run.
And they brought in some big names for that movie too, didn't they? Not just soap actors.
That's right. To kind of underline the importance, the ambition, they actually got established acclaimed film actors like Lloyd Bridges and Geraldine Page for the original cast.
Lloyd Bridges and Geraldine Page in a new soap opera.
Yep. For a brand new soap, that was quite a coup. It definitely made people in the industry pay attention.
That is a bold move. Almost like launching a mini-series today, trying to hook people right away.
And where did all this drama happen? This town, Corinth, Pennsylvania, what was the setup there?
Corinth was designed pretty carefully as this microcosm of America, a stage for playing out tensions between different social classes. It creates that immediate drama.
Ah, the classic soap setup, rich versus poor, or close to it.
Exactly. On one side, you had the blue-collar Donovans, working class, maybe a bit rough around the edges, but the heart of the community.
Okay.
And on the other side, the blue-blood Aldens, established, wealthy, socially prominent, old money, powerful, maybe a little bit aloof.
Got it. So the early stories really played on the conflicts and maybe connections between those two families.
Absolutely. That upstairs-downstairs dynamic, the clashes, the surprising alliances, it's classic soap structure, and it's something audiences really connect with. So putting it all together, from the start, Loving wasn't just aiming for simple romance. It sounds like they wanted depth, relevance. They weren't afraid of tackling some heavy stuff, even with that classic label.
Not at all. And this is where it gets interesting, where it maybe diverges from just being traditional. Despite the romantic title, the classic ambition, Loving tackled some major, really challenging social issues right out of the gate.
Like what kind of issues?
Well, they dealt with incest, which, was incredibly sensitive, especially then. But they tried to explore the psychological fallout, the family dynamics.
Wow, that's heavy for early 80s daytime.
Very. They also explored alcoholism, its destructive path for the person and their family. And significantly, they dealt with post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD, specifically focusing on Vietnam veterans.
Ah, the vets returning home. That was still a very raw topic then.
Extremely raw. They wanted to show those unseen scars. So it demonstrated this real commitment to exploring the human condition, the tough stuff, not just love triangles and who's sleeping with who. It wanted to reflect real societal issues.
That's pretty ambitious for a show trying to be traditional and romantic. Okay, so they started strong, vision-wise, tackling big themes. But it sounds like the ride got bumpy pretty quickly. Ratings, behind-the-scenes stuff, its reputation isn't exactly stellar.
It definitely hit turbulence. It's often remembered as just this immediate ratings disaster, the perpetual underdog. But it's important to remember the first few years actually showed some promise.
Really? I always heard it just bombed.
Well, when it debuted in '83, it landed in 11th place. It had a 3.9 rating. Now, okay, that's not General Hospital hitting 7 point whatever at its peak.
Not setting the world on fire.
No, but a 3.9 for a brand new show back then, it actually put it ahead of some really long-running soaps that were clearly fading, like The Edge of Night and Search for Tomorrow, so it wasn't, dead on arrival.
Okay, so not last place from day one. That's actually surprising, given that eventual nickname, The Little Show That Couldn't. There was a little spark of hope initially.
Exactly. And that spark even got a bit brighter for a while. It actually climbed to 10th place in '84 with a 4.1 rating. Pretty comfortable, relatively speaking. And it held that spot through the '85-'86 season with a 4.2.
What helped that happen? Was it just finding its groove?
A big part of it was a time slot change. On October 8th, 1984, they moved it to 12:30 p.m. Eastern. That was seen as a better slot on ABC right after Ryan's Hope.
Ah, a better lead-in.
Yeah, gave it a stronger lead-in audience. But, and this is the classic daytime chess game, it unfortunately really hurt Ryan's Hope's ratings because that show got bumped earlier.
So Loving's gain was Ryan's Hope's loss. Ouch.
Pretty much. That's how it worked. But even with that better time slot, Loving faced other big problems, practical problems.
Like what?
Local station preemptions. This was a huge issue, especially in Central, Mountain, and Pacific time zones.
Meaning local channels just wouldn't air it.
Often, yeah. They'd cut away for local news or syndicated shows, maybe infomercials. Sometimes it aired a day late, sometimes not at all. Imagine trying to follow a complex soap story when your local station just skips it.
Yeah, that makes it impossible to build viewer loyalty. You can't follow the story if it's not reliably on.
Exactly. That kind of fragmentation really hurt its ability to build a stable national audience, which is absolutely crucial for a serial drama.
So that initial glimmer of hope, the slightly better ratings, it didn't last. It eventually lived up to, or maybe down to, that nickname.
Sadly, no. The progress was temporary. Loving slipped back to 11th place. Then, by early 1989, it hit the bottom for the first time last place among all the daytime soaps.
Oof. Last place.
And basically from January 1991 until it was canceled 4 years later, it stayed there, consistently last. Especially after Santa Barbara ended in January '93, there wasn't even anyone else competing for that bottom spot.
Oh, wow.
That's how it truly earned that nickname, the little show that couldn't. The Los Angeles Times called it that. It just became synonymous with struggling.
Poor Loving. Sounds like a constant battle. And it wasn't just the ratings, was it? Behind the scenes sounded chaotic, especially with the creative leadership.
Oh, it was a revolving door, almost dizzying. Agnes Nixon and Douglas Marland, the creators, they actually left after only a few years.
The creators left that early. That's usually not a good sign.
Not usually. And that kind of opened the floodgates. There was this constant revolving door of writers and producers. New leadership seemed to come in practically every year, each one trying to put their own stamp on it, fix things.
That sounds unstable. It must have affected the stories.
Absolutely. That instability had a direct and often pretty negative impact on the storylines. It's hard to build long-term coherent plots when the people in charge keep changing.
And this is where things get, well, weird, right? Some of the story choices that came out of that churn were just questionable.
Oh, definitely. In their, understandable desperation to maybe boost ratings or just shock people, they came up with some truly memorable, if completely bizarre, plots.
Okay, give me an example. I heard whispers.
All right, so there was a storyline where one of the main heroines developed an addiction to cough syrup.
Wait, cough syrup. Not painkillers, not booze, but cough syrup.
Cough syrup. It certainly stands out, doesn't it? It almost sounds like a parody of an addiction storyline.
It really does. What else? Anything top that?
Well, maybe. How about a character who, trying to save his family's business, literally sold his soul to the devil?
No. A literal deal with Satan on daytime TV.
A literal deal with Lucifer. You can just imagine the writer's room. Okay, ratings are down, maybe a Faustian bargain. It shows the lengths they were going to, trying anything to grab attention.
Wow.
Things got so bad, ABC actually took the very unusual step of putting its own programming executives in charge as executive producers. Haiti Granger, then Joanne Emmerich. Basically, the network trying to directly save the show.
That sounds like a real emergency measure, like the network stepping in because nothing else is working.
It was a clear sign of deep trouble. But even the network suits couldn't fix the underlying problems that came from all that creative instability.
Yet, despite all this chaos, the low ratings, the cough syrup, the devil, Loving hit a pretty big milestone, didn't it? Almost miraculously.
It really is a testament to just perseverance. It's fascinating how a show could keep going for a whole decade with all those challenges, that chaotic environment. Despite the ratings being consistently poor for much of its run, Loving celebrated its 10th anniversary on ABC on June 26, 1993.
10 years. That's actually impressive, given everything you've said.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the dedication of the cast, the crew, and, that core group of loyal fans who stuck with it, even when the stories got, weird. It was a genuine feat of endurance in a really tough business.
A feat of endurance is right. Surviving a decade in daytime is huge. Okay, speaking of those fans and the stories they endured, we have to talk about some characters who stuck around, and then, of course, the absolutely infamous show-ending Corinth serial killer plot.
Oh, you definitely can't talk about Loving without talking about Ava Rescott. She was the classic steamer. The character audiences love to hate, but maybe sometimes root for.
Every soap needs one. Who played her?
She was played by 3 different actresses over the years, actually. Patty Lots first, then Roya Magnot for a while. But Lisa Peluso had the longest run and is probably the most remembered.
And her storylines were memorable.
Oh, legendary. And often absurd, like stuffing a pillow in her dress to simulate pregnancy.
She faked a pregnancy with a pillow. That's something else. Very low-tech.
Very bold, very soap opera. She also got kidnapped at Universal Studios. That must have been a fun shoot. And she was menaced by her lover's identical twin, Gilbert.
An evil twin, of course. She really ticked all the boxes.
She had a very full, very dramatic character resume.
Definitely. And then there was Stacey Donovan Forbes. She holds a special place, right?
Yeah.
Kind of representing the show's longevity.
She really does. Stacey, played by Lauren Marie Taylor, has this unique distinction. She was the only original cast member who was there continuously for the entire run, from day one in '83 right to the dramatic end.
Wow, the only one. That's incredible loyalty, or maybe just survival.
Maybe a bit of both. And she certainly had a very dramatic and permanent exit, which we'll get to.
Okay. And what about Kate Rescott? She sounds like maybe a more stable presence.
Yeah. Kate, played by Netta Rowan for many years, was definitely a grounding force, the classic boarding house owner. Her tenants were often the teens and young adults, getting into trouble, having romantic entanglements. She was kind of a surrogate mom figure in Corinth.
A bit of normalcy in the chaos. And then Gwyneth Alden, the matriarch.
Gwyneth. Played by Christine Tudor for most of the show's run. She was the absolute archetype of the long-suffering matriarch, always loving her roguish ex, Clay, no matter what he did, always worrying about her kids, Trisha and Curtis, who were, mentally disturbed, frankly, and drove a lot of plot.
Every soap needs that suffering matriarch figure.
Absolutely. And her character arc, Gwyneth's journey from this pillar of the community to something much, much darker, that ultimately leads to the show's most drastic, most infamous conclusion. She became central to the endgame.
Okay, let's get to it. The Loving Murders. This sounds less like just another storyline and more like a final desperate act for a dying show.
That's pretty much what it was. By early 1995, ABC Daytime had made the final decision. Loving was canceled. Done. So they brought in new head writers, James Harmon Brown and Barbara Esensten, with a very specific, very grim task.
Which was?
Basically, salvage any characters or elements you can for a potential spin-off and get rid of everyone else. Clear the decks. Dramatically.
Wow. Talk about pressure.
So they launched the show's final and most notorious storyline, the Corinth serial killer. And weirdly enough, a lot of people, fans, critics, actually thought it was one of the show's best storylines. High stakes, shocking. It finally got people talking again.
Best and probably bloodiest, right?
No.
Who ended up on the chopping block? Sounds like a massacre.
It was a significant body count. Stacey Donovan Forbes, the loyal original, gone. Clay Alden, the roguish ex, gone. Curtis Alden, Gwyneth's troubled son, gone. Cabot Alden, the patriarch. Isabel Alden, his wife, Jeremy. All tragically killed off in this plot.
Good grief.
Yeah.
They really weren't messing around. It was like a purge.
It was incredibly fast-paced. Who's next? Who's going to survive? Viewers were genuinely hooked, trying to figure it out.
And the killer reveal must have been a shocker.
Huge shock. The killer was revealed to be Gwyneth Alden herself.
Long-suffering matriarch. No.
The insane Gwyn, as she became known. In this really twisted, tragic logic, she believed she was murdering her friends and family to make their pain go away, to spare them from future suffering.
Wow, that's dark, turning the maternal figure into the killer.
It was a truly shocking twist for a character who'd been there so long, and her ending was just as dramatic. Before the police could arrest her, she unalived herself with poison, completing her descent.
Wow, this really does raise a question. What a way to end a show. They just wiped the slate clean, burned it all down, almost literally. It's kind of unprecedented.
Absolutely, and it was deliberate. A brutal but ultimately effective way to prune the whole narrative tree to make way for something new. But the impact of the Loving murders was so big, so memorable, it actually echoed elsewhere.
How so?
It was revisited on General Hospital in August 2013, nearly 20 years later.
No way. How did they do that? Did Gwyneth come back as a ghost?
Not quite. Luke Spencer and Holly Sutton, GH icons, ended up in the abandoned Alden mansion in Corinth while chasing some bad guy.
Okay.
And while they were there, you could see framed photos of Gwyneth, Trisha, Cabot Alden, and Luke and Holly actually talked about it. They recounted the whole story of the Loving murders. Like, it was established history in their shared universe.
That's amazing. So the story lived on within the ABC soap world.
Exactly. Holly even talked about Gwyn's motive, wanting to spare the people she loved from their pain. It just shows how connected those fictional worlds were, and how even a struggling show could leave a lasting mark.
That's a pretty cool legacy, especially for a show that fought so hard just to stay on the air. And speaking of legacy, this brings us to maybe the most surprising part of Loving. The unbelievable list of alumni. For the little show that couldn't, it sure launched a lot of careers.
It really did. This is where Loving's true impact lies, the part people often forget. Despite the ratings, the chaos, Loving advanced the careers of TV stars and not just daytime faves. It was like this intense acting boot camp.
A hidden gem for finding talent.
Exactly, a place where future household names cut their teeth under pressure. It proves a show doesn't need huge ratings to be a crucible for talent.
Okay, let's name some names. The A-list graduates are just stunning.
Yeah.
Let's start with Julie Bowen.
Yes. Long before she was winning Emmys as Claire Dunphy on Modern Family, Julie Bowen played Steffi Loving back in 1992.
Steffi Loving. Wild. Can you even find clips of that?
You can. There's actually a clip on YouTube. It's fascinating to see her doing drama way back then.
Okay, I have to look that up. But here's the one that always gets me. The contrast is just incredible. Bryan Cranston.
Oh, absolutely. Bryan Cranston, who, completely redefined television drama as Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Right, Heisenberg.
Well, early in his career, from 1983 to 1985, he played Douglas Donovan on Loving. And get this, a New York Times review from back then described his character as the boy next door who is a model of innocent goodness.
Model of innocent goodness. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Knowing what came later with Walter White, the range, it's mind-blowing. It's like seeing Superman working at the Daily Planet and having no idea.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? It perfectly highlights the incredible versatility these actors had, even early on. Another huge one, Edie Falco.
Carmela Soprano and Nurse Jackie.
Before both of those iconic Emmy-winning roles, she had a brief stint as Nurse Becker on Loving. Imagine that lineage. Loving, The Sopranos, Nurse Jackie.
It's incredible. And it wasn't just actors who stayed in drama, right?
Yeah, like Daisy Fuentes. She joined in '92 as Tess. Then she became a huge model, an entrepreneur, and of course a really famous MTV BJ. She built a whole media career.
Right, I remember her on MTV. And Meta Golding.
Meta Golding played Brianna Hawkins in 95. Later, she was in the Hunger Games movies, and more recently, TV shows like Rabbit Hole.
Okay, Elizabeth Mitchell, too, known for some big sci-fi drama shows.
Yes, Elizabeth Mitchell took over the role of Dinah Lee Mayberry in 94, and then she became huge with roles in Lost, The V-Reboot, Revolution, a real genre fan favorite.
And then there's Luke Perry, a massive teen idol.
Luke Perry. His very first named screen role was Ned Bates on Loving in 1987, just a few years before he exploded as Dylan McKay on Beverly Hills 90210.
Wow, his first role.
His first credited role. And he stayed beloved, later playing Fred Andrews on Riverdale. Loving was literally step one.
Terry Polo's as well, from the
Yes.
Meet the Parents movies.
Yep, Terry Polo played Kirsten Larson way back in 1986, long before she was dealing with Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro in Meet the Parents, or starring in The Fosters. So many familiar faces passed through Corinth.
John Schneider, Bo Duke, and Superman's dad.
John Schneider. He popped up as Larry Lamont in 1992, right in between his iconic run on The Dukes of Hazzard and playing Jonathan Kent on Smallville. Even established stars did stints there.
And another TV doctor, Isaiah Washington, before Craze.
Isaiah Washington, yeah. Before he was Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy, he played Dr. Ron Turner on Loving in 92, already practicing his medical drama skills.
That list is just insane. It completely blows the show's failure reputation out of the water, doesn't it? But it wasn't just the future A-listers. There were other notable actors, too, right? People who became solid TV veterans.
Oh, absolutely. Michael Weatherly, for instance. He played Cooper Alden from 92 to 95. Then he became incredibly famous for his long run as Dean Ozo on NCIS, and later starred in Bull, a TV mainstay for decades.
Agent Dinoso started in Corinth, okay? And Debbie Morgan had a really interesting historic journey connected to Loving.
Debbie Morgan's story is fascinating. She was actually in the pilot of Loving as a different character, Carrie Mansfield. Then later she came back as Dr. Angela Hubbard Harrison from 93 to 95.
And she was already famous from All My Children, right? As Angie Hubbard.
Exactly, a huge star from AMC. But her playing Angie on Loving, and then carrying the character over to the spin-off, The City, it made her the first actor ever to play the same character as a series regular on 3 different ABC soaps.
3 different soaps as the same character. That's incredible. A true soap opera pioneer.
It really is a unique piece of daytime history showing how interconnected those shows were and her amazing versatility.
Wow. Any other familiar names?
Well, Jean Leclerc, another popular All My Children star, also joined Loving for a time. And the show always had solid soap veterans like Wesley Addy and Augusta Dabney as Cabot and Isabel Alden.
Yeah.
And John Cunningham and Ann Williams played this warring couple, Garth and June Slater, who had a really significant storyline about their daughter's alcoholism. So even amidst the craziness, they still kept tackling those issues.
It's good to hear that. And despite the ratings, did the show ever get any critical recognition?
Like award. It did, actually, which is another surprising part of the story. Bernard Burrow, who played Louis Slavinsky, won a Daytime Emmy in 1991 for Outstanding Supporting Actor. That's a major award.
An Emmy, okay.
And the show also won an Emmy back in 1988, but for a technical category. Outstanding Achievement in Lighting Direction for a drama series shows the talent behind the camera, too.
Technical Emmys count, too. Anything else?
It also got a Writers Guild of America award in 1994. So, yes, at different points, the acting, the technical craft, even the writing got recognized by industry peers.
So if we connect that to the bigger picture, it really shows that a show can struggle with audiences, but still have recognized talent and quality within the industry itself. It wasn't seen as a total write-off by everyone.
Exactly. It's proof that quality work can happen even in really challenging circumstances. It speaks to the professionalism of the people involved.
Now, something that often changes with struggling soaps or soaps trying to reinvent themselves is the look and feel of the theme song, the opening credits. Did Loving go through a lot of those changes?
Oh, constantly. Over its 12 years, Loving had quite a few theme and visual changes. It was almost like it was always searching for the right identity.
Were these just random changes, or were they trying to achieve something specific?
Definitely trying to achieve something. These were usually deliberate moves by the different executive producers coming in, trying to make the show seem more appealing, more modern, maybe grab a different audience, and yeah, ultimately trying to boost ratings.
So what did the original Loving look and sound like back in '83?
The original opening from June 83 to March 89 was pretty simple, almost classic.
Yeah.
Just a flash of the script logo loving against a plain sky blue background.
Okay, pretty basic.
But there was a neat detail. The L in the logo was designed so if you turned it 90 degrees, it looked like a heart. A little nod to the theme.
Ah, clever. And the music.
The theme was this pleasant, short, 10-second waltz in D major. It was called Theme from Loving by Michael Karp. Very traditional, melodic, fit that initial romantic concept.
Sounds very, well, 80s soap. But then things changed. They tried to get younger, maybe? I heard something about Johnny Mathis.
Exactly. A new executive producer, Joseph Hardy, came in wanting to ditch the old-fashioned image, aim for youth appeal. So in March 89, they rolled out a completely new package. The theme was this big, lush, full orchestral piece sung by Johnny Mathis.
Johnny Mathis sang the theme song for Loving. Wow.
Yep, a huge get, aiming for that romantic, classy vibe. And the visuals were really ambitious for this one.
How so? This is where it gets really interesting, right? The visuals.
They were stunning, honestly. It started with a glass version of the logo moving over this, like, religious painting of baby angels. Then it transitioned into these beautiful charcoal and pastel paintings.
Paintings of what?
They showed a couple's entire romance through their whole life. The first kiss, prom, passionate moments, the wedding, their first baby, even them embracing as an old couple. A whole life cycle of love.
That sounds beautiful. Almost cinematic for a soap intro.
It really was. And a little detail, the lyrics Johnny Mathis sang were slightly different in the opening versus the closing credits. It went from "My loving will, oh, touch you" at the start to "My loving will protect you" at the end. Subtle shift.
That's quite artistic.
Yeah.
But knowing Loving's luck, did it last? Or did they change it again? I heard there was one that was super short-lived.
Oh, yeah. Nothing lasted too long, it seems. Next up was what some called the contender for the shortest-lived soap opening ever.
Uh-oh, what was that one?
This was dubbed New Age Loving. It only ran for about a year, from February 91 to February 92. The visuals were videotaped, live-action shots, but very stylized.
Live-action like actors.
Yeah, but you often only saw parts of them, hands, faces, and shadow, feeding a strawberry, a wine glass shattering dramatically, putting on a ring, all against these dark background. They're trying to be artsy, mysterious.
And the music.
The theme was described as dramatic, yet somewhat soothing. Piano, synthesizers by David Randall Lowe and David M. Shapiro, but it also had these really loud sound effects matching the visuals, like the crash of the wine glass. Very edgy, very 90s experimental maybe, but clearly it didn't stick.
Clearly not, if it only lasted a year. So after all that chopping and changing, what was the final main opening? The one they stuck with?
The final main package debuted, appropriately enough, on Valentine's Day in 1992. This one featured R&B star Jeffrey Osborne singing the theme.
Jeffrey Osborne. Okay, bringing back the vocals.
Yep, giving it a contemporary, soulful feel. The visuals were very romantic again. Panning shots over a master bedroom, overlapping squares, rose petals falling, all tinted in shades of red and pink. Very soft, very romantic.
And the logo changed again.
New logo, too. White capital script letters, each in its own little black box. And a quirky detail. A little yellow canary sitting on the O.
A canary. Why a canary?
Who knows? Maybe just a visual flourish. But this package, with some minor tweaks over time, basically ran until the show ended in November 95. With one very notable exception, of course.
Ah, right. The exception had to be for the Loving Murders. They must have done something special for that.
Oh, they did. It was incredibly distinct and atmospheric. For those few months, July to October 95, during the peak of the serial killer storyline, they used this special limited run sequence.
What was it like?
Very chilling. The visuals were stark, black and white, or very dark colors, shots of things ticking, a pen tapping, a metronome swinging, a clock, a purse swinging like a pendulum, all building suspense.
Oh, wow. Very ominous. And there was narration, right? I remember hearing about that.
Yes, this creepy spoken word narration that directly challenged the audience. Figure it out.
Can you remember any of it? It sounded really effective.
It was something like, "This is the sound of trouble. The kind that caresses lives, even as it steals them away. That delicately unravels the fabric of entire towns like Corinth, Pennsylvania. When the trouble comes, it will sound like this." Clicking sound. "And loving will never be the same again. Trouble with a capital L. Figure it out."
Chills.
Yeah.
It was so different for a soap opera opening. And the end.
The final shot was the letters LOVING, cut out from magazines like a ransom note getting blown away. Then the original Loving logo appeared, kind of floating on a blowing curtain with that tagline, "Figure it out."
Wow. Incredibly atmospheric. Really captured the dread of that storyline, almost like a horror movie opening.
It was bold, effective, and definitely left an impression. It showed that even at the end, they were still trying new things visually.
It really sounds like a show that never stopped trying to reinvent itself, visually, musically, story-wise,
Yeah.
right up until the very end. And then, like we touched on, it wasn't quite the end for everyone. The survivors got a second life in the spinoff, The City.
That's right. Once Loving was officially canceled, ABC's plan was to salvage a few components. They knew the show itself was done, but maybe some characters still had legs.
So the survivors of the killing spree literally moved.
Yep. They packed their bags, left the wreckage of Corinth behind, and moved to the trendy Soho district in New York City. A complete change of scenery, a hard reset.
Who made the move? Which characters got to escape Corinth?
The ones who transitioned to the new show included Allie, Alex, Angie, Buck, Frankie, Jacob, Steffi, Jocelyn, Richard, Tony, Danny, and Tess. Quite a few, actually.
Well, they formed the core of the new show, The City.
Exactly. The City premiered November 13th, 1995. That was literally the Monday right after Loving's final episode aired. A very quick turnaround, hoping to keep those viewers.
How long did The City last?
It ran for 2 seasons, ending on March 28th, 1997. So it had a decent little run, but not a long one.
And it tried to be different from Loving, didn't it? Not just Loving in New York.
They definitely tried. It was still co-created by Agnes Nixon and the final Loving writers, Brown and Eisenstein, but they aimed for a different feel, aesthetically and narratively.
How so?
Well, unlike most soaps, where the city is just this big backdrop, the City focused really intensely on one specific setting. This loft building in Soho, where a lot of the characters lived and worked. The drama was much more concentrated there, more intimate, almost like an ensemble stage play sometimes.
Interesting. More contained. And it looked different too, right? Something about the filming.
Yeah, visually it stood out. It was one of only 2 soaps ever to be shot entirely using the film look process.
Film look, what's that?
It was a technique that processed the videotape to make it look more like actual film, grainier, richer colors, more texture. Different from the usual sharp live video look of other soaps. They wanted it to feel more cinematic, maybe a bit grittier, to match the New York vibe.
Okay, so they really were trying for a fresh start, a distinct identity. But did it inherit Loving's bad luck? Did it struggle too? Any controversies?
It definitely inherited the rating struggles, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were controversies. They had this quite daring storyline for the time involving a transsexual character, Azure C, and a photographer, Bernardo.
Wow, that was bold for mid-90s daytime.
Very bold, trying for diversity, representation, but the storyline ended up being dropped. There were issues, protests from some transgender rights groups who felt the portrayal was maybe mocking, and some critics didn't find the performance convincing. It was a difficult situation.
Yeah, tackling something that sensitive back then was bound to be tricky. Did bringing in big names help the city?
They tried. Morgan Fairchild was in it for the first year. Debbie Morgan, of course, continued her historic run as Angie, but it still struggled, often ranking last among the soaps, just like Loving.
Oh boy. Deja vu. Did they resort to desperate measures?
Well, you could say that. In mid-1996, guess what storyline they introduced?
Don't tell me. Another serial killer.
Bingo! A second serial killer storyline, this one called The Masquerader, who left little notes saying, "Happy now."
Happy now. Oh my goodness. Who was it this time?
It turned out to be Molly Malone, who was Danny's girlfriend, seemed totally sweet. So, yeah, they definitely went back to that, well, hoping lightning would strike twice.
Wow. It's like, if it worked once. And they even brought in a General Hospital star, right? A big crossover attempt.
They did. After Morgan Fairchild left, they brought in Jane Elliott, who was massively popular as Tracy Quartermain on General Hospital.
Tracy Quartermain showed up in the city. That's huge.
It was a major move, clearly hoping to lure GH viewers over, give the show a jolt, a definite sign of trying everything to stay afloat.
And amidst all this, Angie and Frankie Hubbard made history. We mentioned Debbie Morgan before.
Yes, it's worth repeating because it's so unique. Angie and her son Frankie started on All My Children. They moved to Loving. They survived the massacre and moved to the city,
3 shows.
making them the first 2 characters to be regulars on 3 different ABC soaps. And Debbie Morgan as Angie, the first actor to do it. An absolutely incredible journey through that fictional universe.
That is truly amazing. A real testament to the character and the actress. So after all that, the move, the film look, The controversies, the serial killers, the crossovers, the city still couldn't make it.
No, unfortunately. It was canceled in February 1997, still low ratings. It got replaced by Port Charles that June, another spin-off attempt by ABC.
And the set lived on.
Ah.
I read something funny about that.
Yeah, little piece of trivia. The main loft set from the city, Sidney Chase's loft, was actually reused by the daytime talk show The View for its first 5 seasons.
No way. So the set had a longer life than the show.
Pretty much. It just shows, like you said, how interconnected things were. Even physically, nothing goes to waste in TV.
That's great. Now, one last surprising thing. While Loving and the City struggled here in the U.S., Loving actually found an audience internationally.
It did, which is kind of the final irony. It was broadcast in quite a few countries and apparently did pretty well.
Really?
Oh.
Where? And what do they call it?
Let's see. In France, it was Amoureusement, Votre Lovingly Yours. In Italy, Quando si ama, When Someone Loves. It was Ljubav in Croatia, Loving Wage der Liebe, Paths of Love in Germany. Rotations das Sirotes, Love, Love, Love in Greece. And Sevgi Ballara, Bonds of Love in Turkey.
Wow, quite the global reach for the little show that couldn't.
It just goes to show the universal appeal of soap opera drama, the romance, the melodrama, the characters that could resonate elsewhere, maybe away from the intense ratings pressure cooker of U.S. daytime TV. It found its fans somewhere.
That's fascinating. A testament to the power of story. Even when it involves cough syrup and deals with the devil, it found a home.
Yeah.
So despite those constant struggles, the revolving door, the cancellation, and yeah, those truly wild storylines, cough syrup addiction, selling your soul, matriarchs unaliving their families, Loving undeniably shaped careers. So many huge stars came through its door.
It really did.
What does that legacy, especially the talent launchpad part, tell us about daytime TV? And about the dedication of the fans who stuck with it? And maybe, what does it say about actors like Bryan Cranston? That incredible ability to go from innocent boy next door to, well, Walter White. Just think about that for a second. The talent was always there, just waiting.
It's proof that great things can come from unexpected places.
Absolutely. Well, we really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the fascinating, sometimes baffling, but surprisingly influential world of Loving.
Hope you found it interesting.
If you learned something surprising, maybe had a good laugh, hopefully at the cough syrup storyline, or just enjoyed the trip down memory lane, please make sure to like this deep dive.
And subscribe to our show for more insights into classic soaps.
Yes. And please leave a comment below telling us what shocked you the most about Loving. Was it the alumni list? The storylines? Gwyneth, we love hearing from you.
We really do.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.